Jacqueline Garcia is an immigration attorney at Lincoln-Goldfinch law firm in Texas. Her route to law and immigration issues took her from her native New York to working in a migrant shelter for AmeriCorps in Austin and back to the city where she completed her law degree in 2020. She felt the call to return to Texas, joining Lincoln-Goldfinch, where she works as an associate attorney in deportation defense and humanitarian visa cases. You are exactly the person we need to be talking to. Ms. Garcia, welcome to SiriusXM.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us, and I'm delighted that you're free. Let me start with the most broad, dumb questions I can, because I'm pulling out my hair on this issue. How feasible would it be for a Trump administration to deport millions upon millions of migrants who are, let's just start off with the ones who are legally here in the U.S., because it seems like that's on the menu as well?
So I think, with most things that Trump says, it's not really based in reality. It's not feasible at all. It's just for sound bites and to get support from his sycophant fans, MAGA people. People who are here legally have to be put through a legal process in order to be deported. It's not a button that you can press or a switch that you can shut on and off. The Trump administration in 2017 and 2018 tried to end temporary protected status for people from multiple countries, including Haiti. And that resulted in a lot of lawsuits because, as we know, Trump cuts corners. He doesn't respect the rule of law. And he does things just for the headlines and just to take credit for something that he has no intention of seeing through. So it's, the short answer is it's not feasible. It's all about just garnering up as much hate and propaganda as possible, and it's not something that can really happen, at least not the way that he...
Thank you. As awful as that is, I have to say it's still a sigh of relief for me because, we knew he was never going to build a giant medieval wall across thousands of miles of private and residential property and forests and rivers and deserts, and the notion that they were somehow going to pull 11 to 20 million people in this country from their homes, mothers and fathers and kids and grandparents, from the workplaces. It just seemed, are they going to put them in train cars? We know they want to build more concentration camp centers for them out in the desert, but it seemed like so vast in scope. It's important to remember, I guess, sometimes these people are very silly liars, and they say these grandiose things because they think that's going to get them votes, when in reality, there's no infrastructure in our government or no funding apparatus to deport 11 million people. Is there, Ms. Garcia?
No, absolutely not. Border Patrol and ICE have been underfunded for multiple administrations now. They're struggling. I've been proven wrong before, and so I don't want to be naive or too optimistic. There were a lot of things that I didn't think Trump or the Supreme Court could or would do, and yet they have. But I think the mass deportations on the scale that he's talking about is just not possible.
I can only imagine the kind of legal and constitutional challenges a plan like that would face. What has been the historical precedent for large-scale deportations in the U.S.? This is not something we've really heard of in our lifetimes.
No, you'd have to go pretty far back, and unfortunately, the United States has a very long history of racist and xenophobic laws and policies that have gone into place. But what he's talking about, we really don't have anything to compare it to, and I just think at the end of the day, we don't have the structure to do what he's talking about, and certainly, anyone who goes through any sort of deportation process is entitled to a legal defense at their own expense, and people who've been here for a long time, they're going to fight like hell to stay. Their families are going to do everything they can, and a lot of people who are here, they may be eligible for something that they don't know about.
That's right.
We have people come to us all the time thinking that they don't have any options, and we find out that they do, so we'll see.
This is where I always like to point out that both legal and undocumented immigrants commit crimes at a lower rate than natural-born Americans, both illegal and legal. So you mentioned the temporary protected status for the Haitian immigrants, and obviously this is what folks from Ukraine are here with this, and Afghanistan who are eligible for the program. And you have to re-register with the Department of Homeland Security each year, so it is legal. I have to ask, Ms. Garcia, as an immigration lawyer, how did it feel 2 weeks ago to hear J.D. Vance, the senator and VP nominee, come out and say that he's decided that he doesn't think TIPS is legal and that he's going to call these legal migrants illegal anyway because he doesn't think the Biden White House should have been allowed to have them here? So, in other words, they're just going to kick legal migrants out of the country because they've decided they should be illegal. It just seems like even the pretense of civility is breaking down. What was the mood in your office when you heard this? Is it scary or is it ridiculous?
It's a little bit of both. I think it's scary because we know that even when J.D. Vance or Donald Trump say something like this, and we know that it's not true, we know that there are people out there who don't know that it's not true. And
Right.
It has such dangerous real-life consequences. You have people in Springfield, Ohio, American citizens, Haitian migrants, folks from all over pulling their kids out of school because of bomb threats, because of the things that people are saying. That Republicans are saying. And so it is scary, but also ridiculous because TPS is not something that the Biden administration created. TPS has been around since 1990. Congress passed a law under George Bush Sr.'s administration in response to our understanding that we have a responsibility to people who are in this country who can't return to their home countries. El Salvador was one of the first countries to be designated for TPS because of the decades-long civil war that was going on there. In 1998, we had Hurricane Mitch devastate multiple countries in Central America. I mean, TPS has been around for a long time, and it didn't start with Democrats, and it didn't start with Biden.
Thank you very much. I have a couple of just questions about the deportation that they're proposing. Again, I don't think they'd ever be able to do it. I think we agree on that. But this is what I worry about. How much would a plan like that impact U.S.-born children of undocumented immigrants? What is the state of the law now that if someone comes here and they are undocumented and they have a child, and that child then, of course, can enjoy citizenship, but would these children face separation from parents or additional legal complications?
Oh, they would absolutely face separation from their parents. A U.S. citizen child, under the best of circumstances, if the right, facts and legal process exists, can't petition or sponsor their parent until they turn 21. And so, there's not much that the child's status can do to protect the parent. In certain cases where you have a child with a severe medical condition or disability or something like that, where we can show that they would suffer extreme hardship if the parent is deported, we might have a defense against deportation. But those cases are, they're pretty rare. It's a pretty high burden of proof. And so, we would have parents making the decision to leave the child here, maybe with an extended family member, or bringing the child back with them to their country of origin, which might not be safe.
And again, if you're on American soil, you are allowed to claim asylum, right? You are a legal asylum seeker awaiting a hearing. There's nothing illegal about your presence here, correct?
That's correct, yes. And so for the folks that are already in removal proceedings, they would have to see a judge, and they would have a trial, and they would have a chance to present witnesses and evidence and testimony. But so the judge would have the final say in those cases. The mass roundups and raids and deportations that the Trump administration is threatening, promising to accomplish, it's not feasible, again, because so many people who are in these proceedings already have an established right and a process that they are able to utilize, and it's not illegal to do so.
I'm just curious, on a personal note, Ms. Garcia, what was your path that led you to decide you wanted to focus on immigration law? It just seems like such an uncommonly spiritual vocation at this point in our country's history.
I had friends in high school who were undocumented. I had friends in high school who had all sorts of immigration statuses. And I think when it became clear that, by virtue of where you were born, or what kind of visa your parents came on, whether or not you could get a driver's license, go to college, apply for student financial aid, things like that, seems so arbitrary, right? We were just kids and we thought, well, why are we being separated into these arbitrary groups, and why do we have different, but, we've all been here, through the public school system, we've all grown up together, and then President Obama got elected, and all of a sudden we started hearing that DACA might happen, and well, what does that mean? And so I think it just had a huge impact on me very early on, and I just never looked back. It's been immigration or bust for me.
It's incredibly inspiring, and it's also incredibly smart, because I think probably the greatest piece of evidence that they would never try to deport 20 million people out of this country at once is that our economy would collapse. I mean, you know better than me. You're in this world. What would the economic ramifications be of deporting such a huge workforce from industries like construction, agriculture, and hospitality all at once? I mean, if this were to happen and the Republicans got their wish list, how would this mass deportation affect our broader economy and labor market?
I mean, it would just be a disaster. I don't think we can even conceptualize what it would look like. With TPS alone, there are over 500,000 people with work authorization here in the U.S. So if temporary protected status ends, that's 500,000 workers. So when you talk about every undocumented person, every asylum seeker, by the way, they have work authorization as well. I think everything would just screech to a halt. And I don't think that's what business owners want. I think they do jobs that Americans don't want. That's been clear for decades. And so I think, we would just be at a loss. I mean, we talk about the cost of living, the cost of childcare, all of these things.
That's right.
Our clients are child care workers. They work in hospitals. They work in restaurants. They are Uber drivers. They're providing essential services. During COVID, you had people with DACA who were in limbo because of lawsuits over the Trump administration's attempt to terminate the program. And you had hospitals freaking out that they wouldn't have the staff that they needed to provide the care that they needed during a pandemic. I mean, these are people who are doing essential work, and we just would not be able to function as a society without their labor and their support.
Is that the primary legal defense of your clients, that they are doing essential work for local economies?
No, typically if it's, in our asylum cases, it's usually based on persecution in the country of origin. Right. Of course, their work here, their lack of criminal history, their good moral character, as it's called in, immigration law, that's the primary focus. And that's where we have that overlap between TPS and asylum, because it's very backward looking. I can't go back to my country because. And so it could be anything from, a political uprising, civil war, political persecution, ethnic cleansing, gender-based violence, natural disasters. Really, it could be anything. Right.
Here's the million-dollar question, because I think that the politicians should be consulting with professionals like yourself. I mean, are there alternative approaches to addressing our present undocumented population that could have more positive outcomes for both the U.S. and the migrant communities? I mean, you know better than anyone. What would a more humane and legally sustainable immigration reform look like if you could wave a magic wand?
I mean, I think people who've been here for more than a few years, they're working, they're paying taxes, they haven't been arrested, they should have a path to citizenship. I think our asylum system needs to be improved a lot to make it easier for people to access. There are a lot of people who qualify and don't know how to get the benefits, don't know how to apply for the relief. I think we need to stop punishing parents of U.S. citizen children who entered without visas and allow those kids to petition their parents. Right now it's extremely difficult. The parent had to have entered and overstayed a visa, entered on and overstayed the visa. And it's, a 6 or 7 year process. There are some programs that the Biden administration has implemented in the last few years for family reunification, and to try and prevent a lot of people coming from the border from certain countries and offering, sponsorship and special parole programs. I think that's great. I think the more proactive we can be in identifying the countries that need the relief the most and sort of reaching out to them and, affirmatively inviting them to apply if they have a family member here that can sponsor them, we need to be doing that. The southern border is a very dangerous place to be a migrant and to cross into wait in Mexico. People are preyed upon by cartels, coyotes, and it's just dangerous. And so the more we can think about this humanely, proactively, I think the better off the system will be. And I think that, the sooner that people can get on their feet and do what they've come to the United States to do, just have a better life, provide for their family, support the community, and really just do their best.
And finally, what advice do you give American citizens who don't know necessarily any undocumented people, but they just want to be part of a more humane solution? What can people do?
Ask. There's so many things that can be done. I love when people ask me this question. There are so many places that you can volunteer, be helpful. Like at the shelter where I worked in AmeriCorps, they're always looking for volunteers. There's so many places, so many organizations doing good work. You only need to ask around to find one. And I would just say, keep an open mind. And if you don't know a lot, just listen. Be there to learn. And then, you can start sharing messages and information about the process. But I think the most important thing is to just listen and do what is needed and be of service first, and then you'll be able to just sort of spread the message and educate others. But I think it's really important to go in with an open mind and just make yourself available.
Right on. Jacqueline Garcia is an immigration attorney at Lincoln-Goldfinch law firm in Texas. Ms. Garcia, how can our listeners follow you and learn more about the work you do?
Well, Lincoln-Goldfinch Law is all over social media. We're on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, so they can go to our website. They can follow us on social media. And we love doing podcasts and radio shows like this as well. And we're on YouTube also.
What a pleasure. Thank you. And thanks everyone at Lincoln-Goldfinch Law Firm in Texas. Really a pleasure. Thank you. Come back and see us again sometime. I really appreciate being able to ask all these dumb questions to someone as smart as yourself.